James, do you have time to ask your questions?
Yes, I do. I guess my question is kind of like going back to Robert Yates. When I decided on those pieces, I had already gotten like some blurbs from Mel with like descriptions, but I decided I would go down the rabbit hole of Google and Google his name and see. I ended up, downloading like an entire document that was like an archive, like list of every single place like his work had been or something. So that's just like downloaded onto my computer now. But basically when I decided to do that Google search, I was like, oh no, this guy is so awesome. How am I going to respond to his work? And so I was wondering if like either of you had felt any like intimidation or pressures by responding to someone else and how you kind of navigated through that.
Cool. Yeah. Maybe I'll just jump on by saying, yeah. Yeah. I felt some pressure, and maybe that's why because I looked at Sandra Meags's work and I looked at Robert Hughes' work. I think there might be even Vicky Alexander's work in the collection. All these people were on my committee at UVic, but it felt too close. And I needed a bit more distance. So I ended up choosing work that I had actually like never encountered before. I didn't realize Anything and Co was like a precursor to photoconceptualism, or like they're known for that. So they're sort of like a big deal, Anything and Co. But I think it was sort of nice that I didn't like go into it thinking of them as like a big deal. But yeah, I think that, their work is from like 1970. It feels so far away. So I think that distance helped me to feel less intimidated.
Yeah. And similarly, I was definitely intimidated, or just like, especially because I had the chance to meet Sunny, but I didn't know him from before. So it's like, okay, what if he says no? What if he's like, no, I don't want to be in cover? It seemed unlikely, but it's just like, maybe there might be something about what I presented that just wasn't part of how he envisioned his work being presented. And also at least I'm somebody who thinks a lot about responsibility and vulnerabilities of putting your work in the world, and how people will perceive that. And while, of course, we can never know for sure how someone will respond to in every possible way, but thinking about what it means to put work and conversation together, and that I'm like responsible for some of those conversations. So yeah, I definitely felt a lot of, I guess being a bit intimidated, feeling a lot of like the weight of responsibility, I guess, in this type of show where it's not just like, well, here's my work and I can always, most of us can, as we've proven in the last little while, like talk about our work and how we think about it and what we're trying to do with it. But as soon as you're in this kind of really particular kind of intimate conversation, and I think with me and Sunny's work, part of the reason it works so well is also there's like a bit of tension, not between us, but it just like creates a space for tensions around materials and land base and that kind of thing, which I think is really cool. But again, with tension, there can be some, you're holding a space that can be a bit, well, you don't always know what will happen. So yeah, I'm so thankful for the way that it turned out. And yeah, I think I'm always a little bit nervous to share my work, not just in the like my heart, here you go, but or like, oh, I spent 1,000 hours making this thing and maybe it just won't be up to my own standards, let alone anyone else's. But also just that, that sense of responsibility, I think is always there.
For sure. Yeah, that's so interesting. I definitely felt that. I mean, oh my goodness, just going through even more of Robert's pieces, I was like, what, they are so amazing. And I just fell in love with all of them. But that in itself made me really nervous about what I was going to be writing about, just because I was like, I hope it lives up to some sort of standard where like these beautiful sculptures are just like so unique and fun to look at. And I was just like, okay, we can do it. But yeah, I was pretty nervous about it.
I think I want to jump in and just say, like, I think that is what's so cool about this exhibition is it sort of, you said like living up to a standard, this sort of like destandardifies, to make up words. Like there's, right, by just like there's poetry, there's a composer, there's Chinese calligraphy. There's not like a hierarchy. And I think that's cool to see. And just having younger generations responding to, I think, Sunny Asu's work isn't in the far off distant past, but like a lot of us are responding to older. Some of those Chinese calligraphy works were very old. So it's cool to bring that timeline into the gallery. Yeah.
I also wanted to speak to like the sort of trepidation of being an emerging artist or an early career artist.
Yeah.
And how you don't have that experience. So you feel like you have to live up to these certain things. So I appreciate you bringing that up, James, because I don't know if you would consider yourselves emerging artists. I consider myself an emerging curator. I definitely don't have as much experience as my co-curators. But I learned a lot through this exhibition. And there were times where I felt like, oh, I'm not answering my emails quick enough, or I'm not going as fast as my other co-curators. And yeah, it's just interesting. Everything comes together the way it's supposed to. And I think, Emily, I really like your point about the non-hierarchization of the exhibition. I love that it's so interdisciplinary and how there's so many different mediums that are in the show. There's poetry in the space. It's being spoken into the space. There's weaving with natural materials. The Chinese calligraphy is so beautiful. And the composition, the musical piece by Anna Hostman is just amazing. And the other artist that I work with, Sage Paul, she's a Coast Salish artist, and she responded to a print that we have in our collection by her dad. And so it speaks to this really beautiful idea of intergenerational storytelling.